including mobile phones, should be switched to silent. So if we begin with introductions now, I'm Deputy Catherine Curtis, the chair of the panel.
Connacht Mark Labby of the Parish of Greville, I'm Vice Chair.
Deputy Helen Miles, member of the panel.
Richard Vibert, Minister for Children and Families.
Deputy Malcolm Ferry, Assistant Minister for Children and Families.
Donna Marriott, Director of Children's Services.
Darren Bowring, Associate Director of Children's Mental Health and Wellbeing.
And I'm Andrew Heaven, Assistant Director of Policy.
Okay, thanks everyone. Unfortunately, Deputy Porre can't be with us today. So I'll start with the questions. My first question is actually about the 2023 Jersey Care Commission inspection report on CAMS and the recommendations from that report. And there were 2 remaining recommendations from the CNAG review as well. So my question on that is whether, Minister, can you advise the panel what progress has been made implementing these recommendations?
Right, well, I will ask, I'll ask Donna.
Which recommendations were there
So
again?
this is the ones about CAMS.
Oh, the CAMS
2020, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
John.
Okay.
no, Darren.
Well, Darren, if not, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, so in terms of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, Jersey Care Commission inspection report that was published in February last year, there was 12 recommendations. CAMS was inspected again by the College and the Care Commission on the 27th and 28th of November. Last year, we're expecting the new report this February. All 12 improvements from last time, I think it was agreed, had been implemented. There were, and that includes updating and ratifying the MOU between SIPES and Health, creating a number of new policies, clarifying and updating the complaints procedure and making it straightforward and easy to access for children and young people. We supported the application for the shared prescribing of ADHD medication and the development of shared prescribing guidelines, which we are still keen to pursue. And I understand the Royal College and the Care Commission are still keen that there's some outcome to that. And then there was further work alongside introducing a protocol with the police, improvements to our training, monitoring and supervision compliance and some adaptations to the environment. So all of the recommendations were implemented with ongoing work around the prescribing issue that we are very keen that occurs, but is outside of our delivery within CAMS to conclude.
Yeah, that's a shame. It's a bit blocked there at the moment, I think, isn't it? But not by CAMS.
No.
So just a couple of them I've noted, but I just want to check with you. Self-referral for young people, is that okay now?
So we clarified with the Care Commission that anybody can refer into the Children and Families Hub, where there is a dedicated CAMS nurse in there that can support the referral process coming through. We also confirmed with the Care Commission as well the investment in all the universal services in Jersey that children, young people and families can access to support their mental health, which are freely available and easy to refer to. So they were satisfied with the process that we have in place regarding the referral and the ease of access of CAMS services.
A young person could walk into the family hub.
And they would be supported to have their referral addressed. It may be that the nurse would then contact the school or the family to get more information and would guide them through it. But yeah, that is in place.
Okay, great. And the new location, the lease will end, won't it, on Liberty House in 2026? So
September next year.
Is there like a timeline, a plan for that?
Yes, there's been lots of work about next steps, about where CAMS goes to. There was a significant amount of work put in place on one environment that has now been costed and is looking difficult. So we've since visited a second environment which looks more promising. Architects have been consulted on that, particularly around development of appropriate clinical space, which looks appropriate, and there is some current work happening regarding the potential lease. So we seem to have solutions. Obviously, it's difficult to share that's ongoing, but that is one of the key parts of the CAMS business plan this year, to identify an appropriate building for CAMS services from September 2026.
And will that site be in town?
Yes, that is the hope.
Okay, my next question is about how much and whether CAMS is working with Youthful Minds and the Youth Parliament to incorporate young people's voices into the service planning. Maybe Minister, you want to answer that one?
Well, I certainly would hope that we are taking into account the voice of children and the Youth Parliament. Specifically, how that's done. I mean, Darren, have you done any? I'm sure you have done some work on that.
In real positive news, there was the Royal College of Psychiatrists have an annual conference every October, and Jersey CAMS were invited to present alongside with Youthful Minds to talk about the joint work that's been done here together to develop the service and to implement the mental health strategy. So that was seen nationally and as an example of really good practice. And between our CAMS quality assurance team and young people from Youthful Minds, a presentation took place in London last October to share that. Youthful Minds have been absolutely fundamental to the work that we've been doing in CAMS. We have a young person on every single interview panel that we have from Youthful Minds. They've recently been involved again in further advice regarding adaptations to our waiting areas since social care moved out. We engage every month with them in terms of keeping them updated, and they also helpfully challenge us at times in terms of developments and practice. So it's a key relationship. Exactly the same as Youth Parliament, they've been very vocal over the quality of mental health support in previous years, and we've responded to that at times, and to their submissions previously. They submitted some documents that we've produced action plans, I think, that came before the ministers previously. I think this year they haven't, this last year they've moved on to different subjects as opposed to mental health, so we haven't had as much engagement over recent times. But we're absolutely keen to continue to involve young people in Jersey in developing the service.
Just a quick supplementary. We've just spoken about potential new premises, Darren. Would they be that sort of Youthful Minds input be, I think it's crucial for any choice of new premises?
Absolutely would be, and we've got some learning from the last inspection report because, for example, young people, you will see when it's published, young people mentioned that there was current issues around the CAMS building, for example, being on the main school route and
the bus stop.
Yeah.
And well,
Absolutely.
other young people seeing them go in
Yeah.
when they're walking past from school.
Yeah.
They didn't like the fact that CAMS is on the front of the building,
Yeah,
and
you had to say the Brook.
where we would like probably our name on the front, they were saying they wanted it more discreet and different things. So we've got quite a bit of rich information from some of the feedback already. But they will once we get closer to having the potential to go, then we would be working with young people to make sure that the building is absolutely designed to meet their needs and to their specification.
Great. So I want to ask, what's the current waiting time for the initial CAMS assessment? This is the one that was brought in, wasn't it? So that people could be seen fairly quickly.
Yeah.
What's the waiting time for that at the moment?
I think I don't know the waiting up, but the referrals are done within the non-urgent 26 days.
Yeah, so Q4 last year was one of the quickest. We completed initial assessments of all routine referrals in Q4 in 26 days last year. We have a target for our routine referrals for assessments to be completed within 26 days. So obviously Q4 last year was very prompt. It was also interesting. We benchmark our data. We submitted to the NHS benchmarking report, which compares CAMS to other UK CAMS services. And we were identified in that report as one of the quickest services to complete initial assessments on routine mental health than any CAMS service in the UK. The median time for CAMS services in the UK to offer a first appointment is 5.5 weeks, and CAMS here are completing the assessments in 4. So we are ahead of the game in terms of those services.
Okay, and that's for that initial.
That's for initial routine assessment. Anything more urgent is obviously, it's all triaged at the front door. So some young people are seen immediately the same day, others within a week as well. So those are done much quicker. This is a data for those routine ones, assessments.
Right, okay, Minister, could you advise the panel whether there's expected to be any restructuring of CAMS in the next year? About where CAMS sits in the government and so on?
Not that I'm aware of. I had heard some little rumour which I was not happy about, and I made that known, and since then I haven't heard anything further.
Okay, all right.
And that's as much as, unfortunately, that's as much as I know. But certainly from my point of view, we are not going to, change the structure or change the department under which CAMS sits, and I'm quite adamant about that.
So we can expect business as usual?
Yes.
Good. Okay, thank you for that. I think that's my questions for the moment.
Thank you, Chair. Some more questions surrounding a similar topic. Minister, in the CAMS annual report in 23, in the goals for 24, it states, complete the consultation with unions and staff before moving towards an 8 a.m, 8 p.m. duty service, 7 days a week. This will provide a CAMS emergency response to children and family during these extended hours. Has this now been introduced, and if not, why not?
Well, I'm going to have to ask Darren about that. But as far as I know, we are sort of exceptionally good at covering out of hours.
Yeah, so we had some delay. So obviously, as we were moving the hours of existing CAMS nursing staff, we had to have some consultation with the unions. That led to some protracted discussions around changes to rotas and terms and conditions around work. That has now been resolved and agreed. From the 1st of February, CAMS will be moving 7 days a week. We will have nurses on duty 9 a.m. to 5 p.m, 7 days a week. And then from March, we will extend that, so we will be open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So it has been delayed, and that was delayed to the union because of the consultation process around changing staff, but that is now addressed. The other positive news is that Adult Mental Health have advertised and have shortlisted and are currently interviewing for CAMS nurses to work within their out-of-hours team, which works from 8 o'clock at night to 8 in the morning. So very shortly, we should have CAMS nurses present and available 24 hours a day in Jersey, which will be extremely positive.
But we have got an out-of-hours service now, haven't we? Because whenever we've had incidents, I'm aware so quickly somebody is available.
Yeah, they are currently, so out of hours currently is overseen by Adult Mental Health, but what we will have now to supplement that is CAMS nurses as part of that out of hour offer, which will help triage particularly young people that are in crisis and attend an ED, which will be helpful. Very positive.
So will they be part of the team, or will they be just for young people?
This is an extension of our CAMS. So CAMS have a duty and assessment team. So that CAMS duty and assessment team will work from 8 to 8. So it will be their full range of business will now work 8 to 8. And there will be a CAMS nurse then also employed by Adult Mental Health for that out of hours and bit as well.
But to do young people's nursing,
Just
not
to do
the adult
young
nursing.
people.
Yes.
Yep.
Should a young person appear at ED for reports of an issue or crisis, or they be admitted to hospital, there will be a CAMS nurse to be available as part of that support. So that should be a positive.
Excellent. Minister, what measures have been taken to reduce waiting times for developmental diagnostic assessments?
Oh, good
Well,
question.
thank you very much.
I'm going to have to ask Darren.
Okay. So, as you know, neurodevelopmental assessments has been huge numbers of referrals in recent years. 2023, we had over 900 referrals. In positive news, in 2024, referrals reduced to 491. So we have seen now some reduction, as we expected. But post-COVID period, where a significant number, where we have asserted before, it's really positive that children and young people are being identified earlier as having features of neurodiversity and being put forward for assessments, because that means we get better understanding of needs and can put support in at a much earlier, which is obviously much better for young people's mental health and their understanding. So we've always seen this as a positive. The huge increase that happened now created a significant backlog. What we have now is we've increased internal capacity, we've recruited more staff, we've trained more staff, and we're able to deliver more internal assessments. Last year, for example, we did over 400 assessments and we received 491 referrals. So we're getting closer to that amount. What we are still the issue we still have is a significant number of referrals of previous years, creating some backlog. So again, this year we have invested for 2025 an additional £400,000 of government plan money to pay for some private providers who are providing additional capacity to work through some of the backlog that we have. So we've currently got a full-time psychiatrist working solely on ADHD assessments in our service, working entirely on that pathway. So we are working through, but it remains a real challenge.
And is that psychiatrist on island, or are they working
on
remotely?
island?
On island.
Yes, yeah. We have a psychiatrist here from a company called Amino Health, delivering full-time ADHD, and we are continuing to contract a company called Options Autism, which is a virtual provider that does the online assessments, which obviously gives that ability for some families to be able to do that from their own home, which for some young people and families who are neurodiverse, it can be quite helpful.
So have you, just to follow up on that, we've got a figure here of 38 weeks referral time. Do you think that's now been reduced, Darren?
No, it increased. At the end, for 2024, the wait time increased to 55 weeks.
Okay.
So it has continued to rise. Obviously, the added difficulty, it's not just the numbers coming in that require an assessment. Every young person that then is diagnosed then requires support. So, for example, young people diagnosed with ADHD, we know around a third are looking for medication treatment as well. So those then get added to our caseloads, clinicians, and add to our caseload. So we've got an increasing caseload of just under 1,950 young people at the moment, open to what is a relatively small service, and a backlog of referrals, and still a relatively high number of referrals above what our capacity is to deliver. So it is all hands to the deck, and the clinicians are working really hard with the capacity that we have to address it, but it does remain a real challenge.
And in the UK, it's significantly more than 55 weeks.
We are aware that some services are 3 to 5 years, and there is real firm access criteria for most NHS services. So one of the recommendations from the Royal College of Psychiatrists certainly was that most neurodiverse services within the NHS do have access criteria, and for us to consider that over here. At the moment, we accept anybody that's curious and anybody that's looking for an assessment, and they are offered one. But the Royal College are suggesting, with the continued numbers coming in, that as a government service, we do need to look at review that to make sure that the children in most need have prompt access.
How is the relationship with the local GPs then when it comes to that? Do you find that GPs will just refer anything just in case, or is there an element of kind of robust triage going on with local GPs before they get a referral into CAMHS?
I think it's fairly robust. The majority of our neurodevelopmental referrals are coming from education.
Okay.
So over 40% of CAMHS referrals come from education. And we have found really that there's really good understanding of neurodiversity. So people are recognising features and referring people in. So we're not seeing inappropriate referrals. There are just situations where, for example, young people might be referred because there's a question whether they're focused in schools and whether their grades are high enough, and they're compared to young people that might be coming in with more significant challenges being able to access school. So we have a range of different presentations, and it's whether as a CAM service with limited capacity we can offer the full range of assessments for everybody, and that's something we're going to need to consult and discuss further. So we do have a service that's fit for purpose and can offer prompt assessments going forward.
Good, that's... The next question is about the Do-It Profiler Screening and Assessment Tool. Have you managed to secure funding for that?
We have funding. We're very keen on a Do-It Profiler. Do-It Profiler is used as a screening tool by several NHS services, including the Welsh Health Service. So what that would mean that anybody that's referred in for a neurodevelopmental assessment would get a link, an electronic link to the Do-It Profiler, and both their teaching staff and their families can complete the online assessment. What it does is collates the developmental history. It generates a report and details whether it is appropriate for further clinical assessment in ADHD or autism, for example. And it also lists a number of interventions that might be helpful for families or schools based on what is listed. So we're really keen for everybody to come in to get, for families and teaching staff to get access to that, because it will generate almost an immediate set of suggestions and response and give us a screening tool. We've got funding for it and we've had several discussions. The issue is the implementation from an IT perspective. And we've been told in terms of the projects for modernisation and digital, it's lower down the list of priorities at the moment. So that's what we're waiting for. It's not a funding issue and it's not a service issue. It's part of a huge number of pressures, I guess, that department are under.
And is that modernisation and digital within government?
Yeah.
I was going to say health, but you're not associated with health. Yeah, okay, within
Yeah,
government.
the whole of
okay.
government.
Okay, the final question is awareness of neurodiversity in social care. This panel has been concerned for a while about relatively high turnover amongst social workers, etc. Are they getting training in neurodiversity as well, keeping up with that?
So shall I cover that? Yeah. So I think the social work training will cover a vast array of comprehensive training list that we'll have to do. I don't think neurodiversity won't be a required compulsory piece of training that they'll do, but social workers will work a lot with neurodiversity, and I think it'd be fair to say we've had a lot more work joining up with CAMS and social care now, certainly since we joined up the directorate. Darren's been working with my leadership team in trying to create a more seamless service with CAMS and children's social workers together, trying to join up children's plans much more. So they're much more exposed to CAMS practice and CAMS practitioners. So I think I would say social workers are quite well skilled and understanding about neurodiversity.
So is there any need for them to have kind of the formal qualification around spell or build?
No, I don't think across the whole scheme you wouldn't want that, because they need to have, I suppose, their expertise in their area of practice to be able to access the support from the experts that know it, and to be able to understand it in a basic way, the same as, whether they're looking at exploitation or whether they're looking at neglect, or the range of their skill base is quite broad.
I guess the courses Deputy Miles refers to can be quite useful in terms of introductory courses. I think you're going to hear a bit about the practice model and about how we're trying to work much more interdisciplinary around everybody. But we could potentially look going forward about the training offers and what CAMS could provide across the directorate in terms of courses
You
like.
could, but I suppose what we're just currently doing is reviewing the entire of the social work training plan, because there's too much and it's too broad, and what they're doing is struggling to carry out all of the training they're being asked to do on top of trying to do their work. So at the moment, we're just trying to rationalise the programme and prioritise the things that are important, the practice model, the work around neglect, sexual harmful behaviour. Those are some of the things that are critical to the social work assessment. So certainly it's something we could look at in a broader way as we go along, but I think we've got a bit of work to do now to try to rationalise the programme so that we can bring the focus to the areas of practice we really need to develop. We've got some areas of practice that we would want to strengthen probably first, but it is something that's obviously quite a big part of their work, so
All right.
certainly something we could consider
Okay.
going forward.
I think it's me. In the annual plan, CAMS, one of your goals was consolidate and promote the early intervention offer. And we were just wondering if you could tell us about where you are with that and what's been achieved so far.
Yes, so CAMS early intervention service has been fully staffed now over the last 12 months. It's led by Tina Hess as a dedicated service manager, who some of you will be aware of. We have CAMS early intervention practitioners linked to each cluster of schools, so they're working hard to improve relationships and consultations in schools. They're delivering a number of courses for young people and for parents. They're offering brief therapy for children and young people that require it. And there's been a number of really good initiatives, particularly that was picked up by inspectors at the last inspection. We have a nature-based therapist working for that service who's been taking young people out and doing some therapeutic work on beaches and with all of the outside space in Jersey, which the inspectors thought was really positive. And that's what we've been trying to do, I guess, as in CAMS as we've grown the service, is to try to increase that menu of therapeutic offers away from what was originally some of the more traditional approaches like CBT and EMDR to create more difference. And I think that's certainly what Tina's service comes with. It comes with that wider range of offer and more creative type approaches that engage a much wider group of children. So I think it's been successful. I guess one of the purposes of having an early intervention team was to impact on a much more preventative level and reduce some of the levels of referrals. So we have seen a little drop in referrals over the last 12 months. So hopefully that's beginning to show. But as we move on, that will be the proof, because that's what we want to see that team impact in. And then we're having less referrals to the more specialist mental health clinicians that
And
we
again,
have.
you've got the crossover with your building a safer community strategy as well there. So the pieces are sort of coming together, aren't they? What about the parent infant psychotherapy offer? Has that developed?
We have a parent infant psychotherapist who works based within that early intervention team. So that remains in post, very much in demand, has a large caseload but is working through. There's been some discussion about whether that post best sits within CAMS service or as part of some of the restructure it should sit elsewhere. But at the moment it's in place, and I think providing very valuable work in the service.
And what's the linkage between parent infant psychotherapy and, for example, the programmes that are delivered by family nursing and home care, like the sort of the MESH programme? Is there any kind of synergy between those two programmes?
That's a good question that I would need to go back and ask. I can't answer that one at
No,
the
that's fine.
moment, but I can get you the answer
Thank you.
to
I'd be
that, to see
interested.
what discussions they have. Yeah.
Because they be working with similar families, weren't they? And not necessarily maybe delivering different models. So I just wanted to know how they work together.
Yeah, I'll
Thank
come
you.
back on that one.
And also last time we spoke, we talked about finalising and implementing the transition policy between kind of children's and adult services. Just wondering how that's going.
Yes, it's still not over the line. We had our Children's Governance Oversight Group again in January, and I think the next meeting is the end of March. And I reiterated to the people that are working on that offering it has to be completed to be bringing back to that.
So when we see you next quarter,
Yes. Again, there's been work completed on that by CAMS, and it's been handed over, and we are waiting for that to come back. So we are pushing really hard
okay, thank you.
on
So I
that.
guess
It is a crucial policy
it
to
is,
have complete.
Yeah, it is absolutely,
Yeah.
and it's been a running sore for many years, hasn't it? You know, that
It has.
children sort of falling off a cliff really when
Yes.
they shouldn't be. My last question then was about your eating disorder service. I think we talked briefly about that last time, and can you just give us an update on how that's running and the services you're able to offer on island?
Yes, so we have an eating disorder service. Within that we have a lead eating disorder nurse, and we have a systemic therapist, and we have psychology input, and we have assistant psychology input. Post-COVID, we saw quite an escalation in eating disorders of young people in Jersey. Referrals to that service have reduced over the last 12 months. Previously, we've had young people receiving support in hospital and sometimes on occasions off island as well. But we have nobody currently either in hospital or off island receiving treatment, and there are a small number of young people that are getting that treatment within that community CAMS eating disorder service. We still have a vacancy in terms of a specialist dietitian, which we'd like to recruit to, which we've advertised periodically and struggled to recruit to. But we have a really excellent UK-based dietitian that is providing virtual oversight and support that works particularly well. She's very well renowned as well. So in some ways that works particularly well. But we would like to have somebody obviously Jersey-based at some point, but that would be the final piece really to.
And is that
complement
dietitian
team.
considered to be a frontline post, or would that be affected by the recruitment freeze?
I would imagine the frontline post, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's been anything in CAMS that's been affected by that.
By the recruitment freeze. Okay, that's lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
Actually, just to ask something related to that last question, and I don't know if you'll know this now, is the eating disorder ARFID recognised? Is that included? ARFID?
Yes.
It is. 'Cause
yes.
it-
Yeah.
okay.
I know you might have well seen Sky News. There was a article on the news this week about growing prevalence of that, particularly neurodiverse children, limited food intakes and limited groups restrictions around that. So certainly local groups such as All Matters Neurodiverse have been raising that issue. So our service would consider that, and sometimes when there are specialist natures of things, we would look for outside consultation to support, because that can be a real challenge.
There's a lot of research, isn't there, around that girls were presumed to have an eating disorder when in fact it was actually autism that was being manifested through an eating disorder. But
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. I now have some questions which are about play and the play strategy.
You can breathe now, Darren.
Thank
Yes.
you.
And
Okay.
Malcolm is out. But I would say that, despite this having not been with us that long, that we have made some excellent progress. We have not just Malcolm, but we have a member and staff who's fully employed on it, you've got some very clear objectives of what you want to see, Malcolm. So I'll hand over to you, but I've got to say that having picked this up, and I think it was always wrong that it was shared between three ministries, because that was never going to work.
Yeah.
But no, Malcolm's done some excellent work, so I'll leave it to him to.
Yeah, so the first question was just about that, which was what progress has been made with the play policy and strategy since our last hearing.
Okay, so lots of work had already been done on the play policy, and that forms the basis of the play strategy. So it's a really useful document that we're going to append to the final play strategy. So we're still very much in the discovery stage as far as engaging with stakeholders and individuals and groups. And you know, we're really lucky that we've got lots of people who are vocal in the community and really passionate about seeing positive change for play. And we also understand the challenges, because as you look around the parishes, not all of them are controlled or owned by the parish. Some have quite complex arrangements where one group or an organisation owns and another part of the government pays for. So, you know, we need to get to the bottom of how those work and how they can continue to be funded and secured for the future. But the work itself is, we've already got a sort of working document which is going to form the basis of the strategy. We're already feeding into that. And yeah, we do have an officer who is part of her role, to be fair, but she is putting most energy into the front end of this, so that we can get it moving. And interestingly, so just this morning we met with Ports of Jersey and discovered, you know, their opportunities for play spaces, both at the airport and at the harbour during their well, refurbishment isn't quite the right term, because it's going to be a wholesale rebuilding of those areas. But you know, when we look at play, we, as well as indoor spaces and outdoor spaces, it's not just about the apparatus, it's about creating opportunities for children to play and turn them into learning experiences. So, you know, we're looking at the concept of play rangers who can help facilitate play between parents and children, because there are parents who don't know properly how to play with their children, and you know, they've never had that coaching. Or one parent does the play and the other parent does the serious stuff. And actually, it should be a shared objective. So, yeah, I mean, and play can be as simple as open places, safe open places and sticks, you know, where young people can just run around and have fun, you know, because that's, you know, the thrust of it should be about having fun. And then, of course, we also need to make those play spaces as accessible as possible for, you know, for people who are wheelchair users or young people who have neurodivergence. So we've got some really good opportunities with Springfield and Millennium Park to make sure that we get that right. And we've seen the plans and we've discussed the plans with young people at Schools Council the other week. And actually the overriding messages from those young people were, you've asked us a lot, we'd like to see some action now. So whilst we are going to get a final check-in with young people, we're not going to do another big round of consultation with young people. They've given us all that we need. What we now need to do is start trying to ground some of that out.
Okay, so that's a lot of work, and you said you have a working document. So when do you think there might be a play strategy published?
So the timeline is to have it by the end of the year. And, you know, I'm hoping that we'll finish it before that time. I'm always ambitious on these things. And if we do finish it before the end of the year, we will publish it beforehand. But at the very latest, it will be the end of the year.
Okay, and you mentioned the parishes already. So how are the parishes being engaged to ensure equal access to play facilities across the island?
Great. So I'm meeting with the Comité de Connotab in February, and that starts off that conversation to see what the appetite is, what the offer is. A big part of the work is we're going to create a digital map of all the assets around the island, and most importantly, who owns those assets, who funds those assets, and there'll be a sort of system of red, amber, green rating. So, you know, green being top-notch, in good condition and fit for purpose, amber being with some small adjustments, could be made much better, and obviously red being, you know, non-existent where there's a prime opportunity or in such a state of, you know, dilapidated repair that it's not safe. But also, you know, when we're looking at play spaces, indoor and outdoor, there should be some element of risk for young people. You know, we don't want sanitised play spaces. We want places where young people can take, you know, calculated risks, because if we make them completely sanitised with rubber and all those, young people don't learn that, you know, when there are consequences to taking those risks. So it's really important that as part of play, young people get that concept early on.
Yeah, great. So although the play strategy is resting with you, how are interdepartmental efforts, so like with infrastructure and environment, being coordinated for the provision of play space?
Yeah, so it's really important that we keep both of those ministries on board because they are still fundamental to how this will play out in the long term. I've already had meetings with the Minister for Infrastructure, who was very much on board with the concept of the play strategy and creating play spaces, and very often, you know, it will at the end of the day come down to money. So, but my task is create the vision, create the strategy as to what we should be having, and then actually, you know, funding should follow that. But it's my job is not to create the funding, it's to create the opportunities.
Okay. And are there any proposed changes to planning rules in order to streamline the process?
Not that I know of, but one of the planning rules that probably we should need to enforce a bit more stringently is where big developments go up, then play spaces are incorporated into those developments.
Yeah.
Because it is fairly fundamental that where you've got, you know, big areas of development, there needs to be lots of little pockets of where people can play. And you know, it can be as simple as, you know, we met with someone, I can't remember who it was now, but we met with somebody who just showed us another city where all they've got is concrete ping pong tables, and young people play with them on the way to school. And it's just literally stop off for a couple of minutes, have a little game, and then walk on their way. So everyone walks around with table tennis bats and ping pong balls, and that's what they do. And even that, you know, people start to play with other young people who they don't know, and it starts conversations, and that is just littered throughout the city. It can be really simple, thoughtful things that we can do to create more opportunities for play.
Okay, so we should expect to see play areas included in developments.
That's, you know,
It
there is already part of the island plan.
And
But
to see that happen.
We need to
more,
make
so-
sure that is considered on every development.
Okay.
There is another planning issue, which is that some large bits of equipment, but not particularly large actually, need planning consent in Jersey, whereas they don't need planning consent in the UK.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
And so that is an area we need to look at. I think the parish of St Martin had to get planning permission for one of their bits of equipment.
Viking swing.
Yeah,
Viking swing, and it's not that large that you would think it needs planning permission.
I've sat on that swing, I know.
Yeah, so that required planning permission to be put up, and I
unnecessary.
think the same as in the UK, such things should be exempt.
Yeah. Okay. And my last question on play, I think, which is a really important one. Minister, what specific measures are you taking to ensure teenagers have access to outside spaces and adequate sports and fitness facilities, particularly in urban areas, but all over the island?
Well, I think from my own point of view, with the developments that are taking place, we are there are green spaces there, but we are going to work with the our youth club and youth service to get the type of equipment that teenagers require, because it's quite different. We had a consultation last Friday, was at the parish hall, and sadly there weren't a great number of teenagers, but there were enough that, you know, they expressed a view as to what they would like to see. You know, they're quite keen on certain types of, you know, exercise equipment and larger bits of equipment. They say that most of what they see is aimed at much younger children, and I think that's true. So yes, so we are making a very positive effort to get the views of teenagers.
Okay, and in the play strategy, is there an area to focus on teenagers?
Yes, so it is really important that, you know, when we look at indoor and outdoor spaces, that we do cater for, you know, young people and teenagers, because you know, they've got as much right to play as anybody else. They're still covered by the Article 31, and we do need to make sure that they are completely taken into account. But as the Minister has just mentioned, you know, our Jersey Youth Service does create lots of opportunities to play, which for lots of people turns into opportunities to play sport, which is still part of play. And there are some really good offers around the island that you know, teenagers can engage with.
Yeah, so yes, lots of good sports facilities around the island, but a lot of them have to be paid for as well.
Yeah.
Is there any work being done on what's available for teenagers in the way of sports and fitness that doesn't need pay?
Yeah, so again, the Jersey Youth Service has opportunities to access sports facilities, you know, not least at St Peter. There was great sports halls and opportunities to engage in physical activity and physical play in that way. And you know, most of the youth centres have those indoor facilities, and some have access to outdoor spaces as well, which is just as important.
So through the youth service?
Yes,
really?
through the Jersey Youth Service.
Okay, thank you.
I think what teenagers were sort of interested that it was, you know, along the seafront there were bits of equipment, weren't there?
Trim trail, yeah.
Yes, I'm afraid some of them are not looking in particularly
they're
good
not.
condition now.
Yeah.
But that's the type of thing, something that was aimed at their age group.
Yeah.
That's what the sort of things they're looking at.
Yeah.
Thanks
for that. I think that's.
Thank you.
Malcolm was going to come to the consultation, but sadly there's only one of him, and he was so he was.
That is very sad, man.
Yeah. But we're going to see the architect, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're kind of
We are.
We just had a couple of questions over the long-term youth facility planning, really to pick up with what's happening with Lescay, really. At the last panel, I think we mentioned about the remedial work at Lescay Youth Facility, and we were wondering if you could just update us what remedial work has been done there.
Yeah, so there is a sum of money set aside for some very basic remedial work in the short term. Some of that is to improve the lighting in the play space outside, and some of it is just a general tidy up of the area. You know, to be honest, you know, it's a relatively small sum of money. The long-term plan is still to develop that whole area after the town youth centre is completed or towards the end of that
That's still
process.
going to be quite a way away. I mean,
It
you're
is still
looking
going
at
to be a way away.
2029, aren't you, really?
2028 for the town youth
Town
centre
one.
to be finished. So, you know, the Lescay could be started just before that town youth centre gets put into place. Yes, it is still a couple of years away, but at the moment it is just a relatively small sum of money to do the basics and make sure the area is safe and usable. But I visited the site, and you know, whilst it's obviously the area itself, at the time it was built, when the previous development was done, the surrounding buildings have all been updated. That's perhaps why it looks a bit older, but it is still safe and usable, a really good space.
Okay, thank you. And I think we've probably touched on this before, but how are you engaging the young people in the planning for the new St Helier facilities?
Yeah, so we're engaging with, we've got a number of initiatives going on where we're still going to, we've got a town youth service board on the top end of it, if you like, and that's, you know, mainly from colleagues from Treasury and other departments who are going to have an interest in developing it. But through the Jersey Youth Service itself, of course, we're still engaging with young people about what they want to see and you know, what type of facilities would be best placed. We've got pre-planning advice, so we've got some well drawn up plans about what it's actually going to contain. And some of the pre-planning advice was just to turn down some of the light so it doesn't pollute, there's not too much light pollution. There was some advice for the kick pitch outside, just to make sure that, again, noise pollution wasn't too severe.
Is the fact that it's listed causing a problem?
So it's grade 1 listed inside and out. So there will be some challenges to that. You know, it's a lovely, quirky old building, but some of the things that we want to achieve will have to be worked around. The plus side of that is there's some fantastic artefacts which will really make the building a feature. I suppose the challenge is the association with alcohol. So, you know, the theme is grain and growth rather than producing alcohol. So we don't want to lose the fact of what the building was. But I think it will make it an even more exciting building. But yeah, there will be some challenges.
So it's going to be a case of managing expectations then with the young people about what they're
Managing expectations and some of the things that we perhaps like to do, like the big cylindrical vat in the middle, is going to present a challenge, because our initial thoughts were we cut it up and get it out of the building. It's not going to happen. But actually the cost of cutting it up and getting it out of the building would have been huge. So why not just turn that into a feature? And there might be opportunities to create little platforms within it and little sort of cubbyhole rooms where people can meet. So just turn it into a quirky
to be
feature.
really innovative, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
As long as it doesn't smell like it used to.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
It hasn't brewed in for a while, has it, I suppose? Yeah. Thank you for that. My next set of questions are around the development of the multidisciplinary service and the implementation of the therapeutic practice model. So, Minister, you told us during the proposed budget hearing on the 16th of October that within families you're looking at multidisciplinary service development, system-wide quality improvement, practice model enhancement. So could you just give us some more details on the planned service developments? How's it going to be structured? What your key outcomes are?
Yeah, I'll just sort of introduce it, but this was part of the presentation that we gave to Com yesterday. The children's reform programme has been reshaped to create more of a focus on supporting families and creating high quality therapeutic intervention. As part of that, we not only do we need the right people, but we need the right buildings in which to undertake those services. And so there is now a 5-year reform plan. Looking forward to for the first time, we have a plan that looks forward to 5 years, and has, I've got to say that Donna has made this priority since she arrived in April, and no stone has been left unturned with regard to what the current costs are, what they might be in the future, the number of children we support, which we know is going to increase. And as I say, it's a plan that covers the whole of the service. So if I ask Donna to give you some more information.
So that so the reform programme that the minister's talking about, we've sort of split it into three key strands really. One of them's supporting families, which most of the multidisciplinary work sits under. But a second part, which the minister's talking about, which is, I suppose, homes and residential care and care for children. We've also got some multidisciplinary capacity that's going to be built into that as well. So there's a kind of multidisciplinary model, but sitting in two different bits. One bit sits across from early help all the way through until children come into care in that sort of safeguarding space. And the early intervention space. So the plan is there. We've started to mobilise to have some extra youth work, CAMS intervention, and some extra social work capacity around exploitation and missing, some of the risks that are associated around that. That multidisciplinary team won't be case holding like a social work team. They'll sit alongside the service. So you've got children that have child in need or child protection plans. This team will offer extra capacity and support around some of those more specialist areas. And they'll do a piece of intervention for perhaps 6 weeks, and then that will help the child and the family, and then they'll move on and do other work. And then separately, the multidisciplinary offer in the sort of residential and the fostering space, the care space. Darren's already started to mobilise the children in care CAMS team around that. So there's a manager in there now. There's some recruitment going on to try and get the psychology and the other support in place for that. They'll wrap around the workforce in both residential and foster care workforce that support children. They're not there to case hold the same because they'll still have a CAMS intervention. But this will help the teams to work more effectively with the children and feel more confident around, you know, their specialist areas. So that works scheduled in for being, that team's been scheduled in the plan to be delivered in the next 6 months. It won't all be in place, but we've already mobilised. I think we've got 4 family support workers already in post. 1 social worker's just being recruited. One of the CAMS managers is already in place there to do that as well through Darren's team. And we're just about to go out to adverts in the coming weeks for some of the other posts. And it'll probably also include some intervention around substance misuse for parents and domestic abuse support as well. So it will be a whole sort of streamlined offer across the whole piece that will hopefully be able to support all families. So it'll only be a small team, but it will stretch across, and that's why it won't case hold. So that's built properly into the plan. We're just mobilising about where they're going to be best located to make that work. And within there, there'll be a training offer and a development offer within those staff. We haven't quite fully nailed, I think, what the CAMS offer will look like. Yeah, we've had some thinking about whether some of that might be some assistant psychology as well, to try to make it more sustainable, really, and to also get pathways into development for workforce as well. So make it a little bit more interesting to try and get people in.
And what do you think the challenges are going to be around making this model work, about implementing the model?
So in the UK, they do the family safeguarding model. It's a really effective model. It's been really well researched. It's come up really well with outcomes for children. It's resulted heavily in reduction in the local authorities that have implemented, like Hertfordshire. It's had a really big success rate in reducing need, so reducing children out of statutory intervention and pushing need downhill a bit. It's also had a reduction in children in care as well. So you'd hope that it will help to keep children at home, because it's much more about being wrapped around families. For the children in care, we would hope that it will lead to better intervention for them, better quality care. Obviously a reduction in need, you would hope as well. We obviously have quite a lot of children that are presenting quite late to come into care. That's about the history and the legacy. And as time goes on, you'd want that to happen less and the intervention to be a bit more effective.
So you referred to this as kind of the therapeutic practice model.
It's not, I suppose there's been a lot of discussion, I think, about over time about opening a therapeutic home. And I think what we've talked about more is what we want is to have a whole service offer that's not just about one home. Now, our practice model was brought into back in 2018.
That was going to be my
question.
That was going to be my question,
model.
actually. Is this a transition out of the practice model into the therapeutic model?
Not really. So what we don't want to do is undo the investment and the work that's gone into the Jersey Children's First Practice model. It's been here since 2018. I think what we'd say is, and what's obvious, it hasn't really landed as strong as you want it to, or has been effective as what you want it to.
Why do you think that is?
Change. I think there's been a lot of change across the system. I think probably the practice model, when it was built and rolled out, is very, how can I describe it? It's quite an academic model in thinking, a quite theoretical model. And I think what with the work we've been doing over the recent months is really that that's good. You do need that theoretical model, which is the therapeutic part, about being strengths-based, about being restorative. All those things are really important in practice, but they need to sit on something that makes sense to people and how they implement it. So the work that we've been doing, Darren's been leading on the Strand, actually, as part of the reform programme. Darren's been running the Supporting Families Strand, leading on it, and part of that work in that practice model is to say, well, yes, you want those therapeutic, theoretical approaches. You want everyone to be trauma-informed, because the children we work with, it's absolutely critical, but it needs to be sitting on something that's concrete, that makes sense. So that's about the team around the child and the family, about having that lead professional that takes responsibility, about joining up our meetings around the child, making a joined up plan. So the work that we've got going on at the moment is that it's trying to take the theoretical model we've taught everyone, like we've had quite a lot of people in that have trained over the years, and that therapeutic, trauma-informed. And now we're saying, actually, how do we make that really become something that's implemented in practice and real in day-to-day life? So the pilot's just started on. We've started one of the pilots in one of the children's homes, or in our secure home, actually, is the plan, to pilot that around a group of children, a small group of children, and test it out to make it better get implemented. And then we've got a programme over the next sort of 3 to 6 months that's going to really land implementing it fully across children's social care and get it really working and operating.
You talk about a joined-up approach.
Yeah.
In Jersey, we have quite a reliance on third sector and charity
Yes.
involvement to deliver
Yeah.
services to children. So I'm thinking of, Brighter Futures are a classic example. And certainly they were very much part of the Jersey Children First model, so that, the third sector would be expected to join in this. What thoughts and actions are you taking to engage those sorts of sectors within your new model?
So they are part of the plan, the broader plan, but everyone's already been trained and still are trained. The model still sits online. There's still the training pack that goes with it. That's all carrying on. What we've decided we need to do is to get it working better in one bit of the system. So we've decided that that's where we're going to do it in children's social care, along with the reform programme, to land this part of making practice a reality and making a theory a reality. And then once we've got that working this year, we'll roll that out. So we've started on the middle bit, and then we'll start to then roll it out as part of a wider plan.
And have you had engagement with the charities in the third sector about what you're doing at the moment?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
But the model has...
It's public now.
Yeah. The model's very well... everyone's been trained. It's an open offer. There's an expectation that every partner and organisation is doing it.
And at what point are you going to communicate with the third sector that this is what you're doing and that you'll be engaging them to support you in delivering the best for children?
Probably not yet, because what we want to do is pilot what we've got, test the model, because the core of it is really about the practice around the child's child protection plan or the child in need plan. So we need to make that work in the system first. And then once we've got that done, we are now the reform programme and the new plan has been to come. We will start to roll it out across all of the partners and services to make people aware, so that people will start to see that coming through. We're just building the comms plan around it now.
Okay.
So it will happen, but it's not... I think we've got to do it in the right order this time and try to get it working properly somewhere, and then...
So you're really coming at a top-down this time?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've talked fast.
I think we need to perfect it somewhere.
Okay, I think that's you, Mark.
Me?
Maybe?
Minister, the next section is about the Jersey Family Justice Council and Child Contact Centre. How will your department be working with the newly established Jersey Family Justice Council to address the issues identified in family court proceedings such as trauma and domestic abuse?
Well, we are a member of the Family Justice Council. We are working with others to achieve those aims. It's a fairly new, I think it existed previously, but it's recently been reformed. So it's fairly, it's fairly new, but certainly to me, and I think to most people aren't. But the way that they've set about this is actually that they've set up a number of subgroups, and we sit on a number of those, including a working group on the voice of the child. There's a working group on training and pre-proceedings. So it's fairly early days on how that will be achieved, and to see how those working groups, the success of those working groups. We've still got to see what comes out of that. I've got good expectations with the range of people on the Family Justice Council, that we'll see some very positive outcomes from that.
And the specialist court for addiction-affected families.
Well, of course, that's
Subgroup.
That's something that was raised at the Family Justice Council. It's not a specific. I don't think it's a specific area for children's services. I would support such a court, but I was asked about funding, and the funding there is simply no funding, certainly from us. I don't know if Justice and Home Affairs also sit on there, and I would have thought the funding for the court is more likely to come from that area.
We'll ask the
We'll
minister.
have to question.
Yeah, we'll have that.
Yeah, it's not, it's, you know, but certainly from us, I mean, I have to say, you know, we are, you know, we are at the moment likely to see a deficit for already for 2025 without further funding anyway as the whole of children's services, and so there simply are no funds from us for any additional projects.
Sure. Considering that funding shortfall, we are also concerned about the Jersey's only child contact centre and how
Well,
that's going to work.
You know, it is Jersey's only contact centre for private family law matters. And I think we have to make a distinction between that and the large number of children who use the services that we provide for anything that is not a private family matter. So we provide services to all other children.
Can I just say, though, I think it is the only contact centre where separated parents who, where one parent may need supervision.
Well, that is the only, for private family court matters. That's, we provide that service for.
So most of those families that have gone, that will be separated, or they're in either dispute or there's an area they're often in private family law. So children's social care would tend not to be involved in organising the contact arrangements. That'll be more through JAFCAS and the sort of the legal system. Whereas for children in public law proceedings that are in care, all of that oversight for that family time is done by children's social care in our.
I see.
Now, what I would
Two
also say
different groups of children
is that funding for this, that's quite interesting. This was raised at the Family Justice Council, and there was a judge from the UK online who quite clearly said that these services are not provided by any council in the UK and paid for by any council in the UK. Private family law matters are not funded by councils in the UK.
Okay, but they are still children and families.
They are still
and
fit,
they
but
need
it
a
doesn't mean,
service,
I know there's a tenuous link in some ways there,
But
because this is a court matter.
I was involved with trying to help the previous contact centre, Millie's, which was staffed by a lot of volunteers and had done what they do for a long time, helped a lot of families. When they closed down because of new conditions which were necessary, then Centrepoint, I believe, was asked to take this service on.
Yes.
So presumably they need support from somewhere.
Well, it was the funding that my understanding is, the funding was for 1 year, and then funding was to be found from alternative sources. That was my understanding of that. We did not offer permanent funding.
Do you want me to pick this up?
Yeah, you can, but what I would say is it doesn't necessarily sit with children's services. It is it's more a judicial matter, and certainly in the UK, any funding that does come from government comes from CAFCAS, which is part of the Home Office. So again, this is a Justice and Home Affairs matter.
So,
now, I'll before we haven't said Malcolm will follow what, you know, we potentially have some arrangements for the next couple of years, but it is not something that Children's Services will pick up on a permanent basis because it does not fall within our area.
but having said that, I've been working with Centrepoint since the tail end of last year because they did highlight that they had an issue which was funding was going to run out in February of this year. So I started to give them, they are a charity, I started to give them some options for new funding streams, which, to be fair to them, they put in place and they had applications for. it's probably a little bit late in the day to start that process, because when your funding is running out in 3 months' time, a lot of these funders need far more advance notice of that. So in between times, I've got an officer who is connecting with Centrepoint to find out what their financial need is, and we've got the scope of that. Obviously, I don't want to talk about what that is in this forum, but we understand what they need going forwards, and so we are working with them to find a solution in the short term, on the understanding that going forwards they will either need to fundraise or to find a funder who will continue that forwards. But what it does allow them to have is some breathing space where they can continue the service, because whilst it isn't directly our responsibility, ultimately I think there is merit in the fact that children and young people are still being assisted by that service. So whilst it's not directly in our control, the overall concept of helping children is, and this is part of that. So I'm determined to find a solution in the short term on the proviso that they find their own longer term solution.
So we're not unsympathetic to the situation, and therefore I've asked Malcolm to look at it. But it's not something that we will pick up permanently. Doesn't fall within our area. It's very much within really Justice and Home Affairs.
It's the court, actually.
It's the court.
Well, the court, yeah.
It's not a
Justice
children's
and Home Affairs,
services
it's the
matter.
court.
And we certainly don't have the money, so that any funding that is found will not actually come from us.
But we will find a short term
We
solution.
are looking at a
and it will
short-term
work.
solution for funding, but not from our budget.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, any matters that regard the welfare of children, we're going to ask about.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we've given you some surety that in the short term at least, we're working on a solution.
Okay. Oddly enough, I'm going to be dealing with planning.
Planning, oh,
Minister, following the issues with planning permission for a local children's home, which I'm sure we're
Yes.
well of, what lessons have been learned by the department to streamline future applications for children's homes?
well, actually, part of that process is still ongoing, so there's a limited amount that I'm going to say on the matter, because I'm still, that situation is not resolved at the matter, and I still have some matters ongoing, but I think, certainly from my point of view, and I've said it before, I think it's a matter for, not just for me, but it's a matter for the Assembly, whether they really think that having a cared for child in a house merits it needing planning permission. I don't believe it does. I think it's wrong. And once I've finalised matters with regard to that particular home, I will. My view is I certainly will raise the matter with the planning minister, but my intention would be to bring a proposition to have children's homes with 4 or less children exempted from the planning process if it's a transfer from an existing residential home. I don't understand why it needs planning permission. If the same house was rented to the parents of those children, they could move in instantly and no one could raise any objections to it. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm on the planning department.
So
It's
I
a
am,
public declaration.
you know, I'm sorry I can't say more at the moment. You know, I still have some matters in respect of that particular home that are unresolved.
Okay. Well, my next question was actually to ask you if you'd engaged with the planning department, and clearly you have.
I have.
So that is negated.
Or we will be. Donna?
Yeah, just in terms, because you asked about learning around planning, and I think, looking back, I wasn't here, but that, I think it's important to recognise that what didn't quite happen right at the front end of that, which you're referring to, was actually outside of our control, because it was a court-ordered arrangement that child went to that arrangement happened. So then that kind of triggered a whole range of events that happened and then you're trying to catch up behind it. So I think we're trying to work quite hard with the judiciary and in practice with the staff about not getting into arrangements where we're setting up solo homes. It's really important not to do that, because you can't do that in a quick way. You need planning, and then you need registration of the children's home, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So that's months. We can't just do that overnight in a quick way in response to need, and that's why we've got to fix the residential estate. So we've got the right homes that we can use in the right way because they're already open, rather than getting into those sort of quite challenging spaces. And that's why we need a new residential estate and a new plan, so that there's more flexibility and better economies of scale to care for children as they come into care properly.
That makes sense. Minister, the next question. Can you advise the panel with an update about the work of the Children in Care Council? Has this been established?
The Children in Care Council is in the process of being established. As you know, we had outsourced it, but we took it back in-house initially, and then it's now been placed with our independent reviewing officer.
Service.
So they are taking it forward, and they are making quite good progress. We took it in-house because we needed to accelerate the forming of the Children in Care Council. It didn't appear to be making the progress we wanted, and there appeared to be possibly yet another long delay before it was formed, and therefore we took it in-house. But I'm satisfied now that we're making the progress, and with with that where it's been placed, it also retains a degree of independence.
Could you give us an idea of its priorities going forward?
Well, to us, it has a great deal of priority because it feeds into the Corporate Parenting Board. Now, I think, yes, Dominican, but I think it was back in 2023 that we actually initially.
Before then, I think contracted in 2023 to start a new contract to develop it. But I think there's been a long history of trying to get the Children in Care Council operating over time, and I think it's important that we recognise that I don't think it's something you just do in a simplistic way. It's something that you build over time, has been my experience. So what we've done is created the new Corporate Parenting Board, and the structure now has a thematic structure to it. So it's got 4 subgroups sitting underneath there. And one of those subgroups is a participation subgroup. And that participation subgroup is made up of all the different agencies and people involved in participation for children. You've got CAMS, we've got policy there, there's some people like arm's length bodies that are corporate parents in law, like Jersey Arts and Jersey Sports. There's lots of people all around that table starting to build a participation plan for children in care and care leavers. And that plan is like an annual calendar we've created, and that starts to map out all different things that we'll do with young people to get them engaged, and starting to say, well, what do services like? What are the services like I get in Jersey? You know, what's my care like? What's the things that don't work for me and need to look different? And they'll help that group will start to get those children's voices much more understood, and that will design the plan about what we need to look different going forward. So it's got a participation plan for the year that's been built that will go to the board next month, I think it is, to the next Corporate Parenting Board, that includes like a celebration event for children care and care leavers. It includes Come Dine With Me. It's got some participation events, a whole range of different activities about how we engage young people to get their voice. We've had the Bright Spot Survey, which is an independent UK national organisation that's done a survey of young people's views and told us the things that don't work for them and that's not right, or the things that do. And that's helped to shape the participation plan and the things we need to focus on this year. And that's provided an action plan of the things we need to do differently. And as we start to engage those young people, so in the first 3 months of having the new programme, we've got 10 young people that have said to us they're interested in being involved in the Children Care Council. So it won't really be a real thing until we've got a group of young people that start to shape it, and then it will form over time itself, and it will become real as it goes along, and then those young people will start to drive more about the design and delivery of services and what they should look like and what needs to be different, and then eventually they'll kind of become the council and take it over. And when it works well, it's fantastic, but it does take time. But what we know is quite confidently, just in those few months and the 3 participation events we've had, we've got young people coming forward saying, actually, I might be a little bit interested and I might want to do it, and just coming on board a little bit. So that will create it. And we've sat it with the Independent Reviewing Officers Service, because the Independent Reviewing Officers team sits separate. It's independent from Children's Social Care. It's the team that review the care plans for children that isn't in the social work team. They bring independent challenge and independent oversight, and we've sat it there because they review every child's care plan that's in our care. So they're in touch and in contact with every child, and they'll help us to get that window into them, because they'll be able to, every review, be talking to them about being part of it.
Is that team fully staffed now?
The IRO service. We've got agency, maybe we've got some agency staff in there, but we haven't got, I'm not aware of any vacancies. I'd need to check off the top of my head, but it's actually progressive. It's made a lot of progress, the IRO service, compared to our previous inspection.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah.
Talking of implementation, the panel would like to be advised about what types of accommodation are used to house young people and care leavers, and if the accommodation used is on a temporary or long-term basis.
You can, yes, I mean, that's, I'll let you do that.
We've had so under the reform programme, that Loving Homes strand about care, we've got a big piece of work going on currently, and under the corporate parenting board, one of those other subgroups is a home and housing subgroup. And we brought together all of the professionals. We've tried to around home and housing, so the housing providers, the PAs, the personal advisors in the children care leaving bit, and the children's social work teams, our housing policy, where we've got the issues around population and all of those sorts of things to work through. They've built an action plan underneath there. And one of those strands in the action plan is about working on pathways for young people into independence. So we haven't got sufficient accommodation in the space where young people need support before they're ready to move on to become independent, or necessarily a good glide path into that you'd want to see. And so the work under the reform programme is saying we need to build that. So the new 5-year plan builds about more accommodation for 16 to 19-year-old young people, so that they can come through care and into independence in the right way for them. More work we've been doing with things like Andium to try to build pathways into accommodation for young people in the island that will be built in as a standardised thing that makes sure that young people have got accommodation available. So currently we have hostel accommodation that is used, has been historically always used. I think one of your queries last time that we responded to was about the Jersey Youth
Association,
yeah.
Youth and Friendship.
So
yeah.
they've got like 5 properties on the island. There's other hostel providers. So that is part of the offer currently for care. For any young person who is over 18 or over 17 can go and use accommodation. So our care leavers could go there and do. I don't think that would be our first choice of accommodation, but it is an offer that they have. We've got young people in supported accommodation, which is our own accommodation. It's Sipes Children's Home, really, where we've got 17 plus, 16, 17, 18 plus young people, and up to 20 actually, residing in there, where they've got a supported like care staff on site. We've got a property around which does that. And then young people will be in some tenancies, social housing tenancies, and we'll have young people in halls of residence and uni that we'll be supporting and funding as well. So it's a whole, what you'd expect really, a whole range. I think, as I said, we've got more to do to create more accommodation and it to be more thought through and more future focused and more sustainable. And that's the plan, the work in the plan to create that and create more accommodation in different parts of the island, that there'll be flats and things like that, that young people have better move on options.
Sure.
Is the hostel accommodation classed as temporary or?
It is temporary, but classed as suitable currently in our, I took it away from the last scrutiny panel to have a look, didn't I? So we are using it. It's a very tiny number of young people we've got in there, I have to say. But it is used. Sometimes young people might vote with their own feet into that arrangement. If the young people we have got in hostel accommodation, it is in supported accommodation. So like Jersey Youth and a Friendship has got support attached to the offer. There's staffing in there that is supporting those arrangements. Normally our young people should have a personal advisor and they should be visiting and looking at young people's wellbeing and building part of the plan to support them and helping them to move on to next steps. A lot of the personal advisors' roles will be helping young people to get into accommodation, to support navigating the housing pathways and working their way through into that more permanent arrangement.
Okay.
But I think I'd say we've got work to do. It's not where we want it to be yet, but it is built into the plan. And I think probably some work to do with those providers to make sure that we're all assured that it's right and it meets young people's needs as well. And that's part of the plan.
Okay, thank you for that. We're nearly out of time, but we have just a few questions on the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child recommendations.
Okay.
Jersey was criticised in 2023 for some of these concerns by the UN Committee on Rights of the Child. So, Minister, how has your department and wider government been addressing the recommendations from the UN Committee to ensure Jersey's practices align with international standards?
Well, I mean, we continue to work to meet those standards. We have two bits of we have legislation coming in this week, which further aligns us. Well, next week at next week's assembly, that further aligns us with the UN CRC relationships. There are areas I know of, of concern. I'm trying to.
One that was that I've got here in front of me was about the children placed in care in the UK and whether there was a lack of legislation around
Yes,
how they were getting on.
That's something we continue to work on. The change of the UK government hasn't helped, but I think, Andrew, you've managed to re-engage, have you, recently with the UK government?
Yeah, I can help.
Yes, yeah.
Would that be okay? You're quite right. There were three particular areas that were specific to Jersey where the UN committee were looking for assurance, and one of those was about young people placed off island. And one of the elements of the response to that has been working with policy colleagues in the DfE with regard any reciprocal arrangements. As the Minister said, the general election in the UK kind of intervened, shall we say, and then as a new government came in with their own aspirations and legislation that took place, I am pleased to say that we came up out of the other side, and I have spoken to DfE colleagues. We do have an agreed scope for amendment. We do have an agreed plan on how to do that. In speaking it generally, there has been the UK government published a statement in November 2024 called Keeping Children Safe and Helping Families Thrive. Now, underneath that statement, there was some proposed legislative change, and which is quite small actually, legislative change would sit alongside that and go through the proper process alongside. So where I am with that, where the Minister is with that, is waiting for the timelines. So I agree, it's not going as fast as we would like, but we have managed to make some progress and come up the other side of a general election and a new government in the UK. I think, if I may, Minister, if I may.
Yes,
to say a
yeah,
bit
yeah,
more
if you want, yeah.
On that subject, the most, and Donna can come in here, the recent Jersey Care Commission inspection of children's social services were satisfied with the arrangements for placing children off island and acknowledged that some children were receiving high quality care, which I think for many, the Minister certainly took assurance of that. And secondly, we maintain and are working quite closely with the Children's Commissioner, and communication and focus is both productive and purposeful. We're not over the line, but there are actions in train with regard that particular recommendation from the UN committee.
Okay, so it's like a work in progress at the moment.
Yes, there's a couple of elements to it, but it is a work in progress, yeah.
And will the government provide a formal response or progress update to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child?
Yeah.
To respond. And the Minister will be making a formal response, and we will be, we've spoken, the Minister has agreed the scope of that response. There were over 200 recommendations. So most of the discussion has been about what will be the most purposeful. Being a civil servant, there's nothing I like best in producing a very long document that nobody refers to. But apparently that's not what the Minister wants. So we will go for something that is proportionate, is relevant to this government in terms of what it's trying to propose and pursue, and we will be publishing it, and the Minister will be taking it forward and presenting it to the States this year. We hope to be furnishing the Minister late Q2 with that report. So yes, that's the intention, and the Minister has signalled that to the Children's Commissioner's Office too.
That's great. So I think that's all the questions done.
Excellent.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.